So I wanted to talk about some more rebirth stuff here. Starting with, a post that was like a little while back, last month. I just haven't got around to checking it out and doing a discussion about it. But I want to talk about this key art here that's created by the creative director Nomura, and this artwork represents the three worlds that form the axis of the story in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Sephiroth is obviously in the center, as he represents the instigator of the events of the past, which is interesting wording there. I mean, true, he is. Like, I even had this as my background on my PC here. I love this image, but I want to look, deeper into it. Like, as far as okay, what stuff can we pull from this? To tell. Obviously, Zack and Cloud are representing their own timelines. He's at the center because he's caused issues that essentially have made a new timeline where Zack is alive, and how there's so much here kind of going on that is a metaphor or symbolism as far as what is possibly about to happen, or for some foreshadowing. The world, to me, this speaks chaos. Like, this speaks disorder, destruction, wrath, this, essentially doom for our heroes, essentially, in the story. Because of how the clouds, the sky look, even the ground, how different shapes and things like that. So, and I feel like it's definitely going to culminate in Cloud and Zack essentially beating up Sephiroth. Hopefully in part 3. Hopefully, we'll see. But there's also the fact that, at least in remake, there are different versions of Sephiroth. I'll tell you, like 3 or 4 versions of Sephiroth. There's like present day. There's the one that's from the future, from Advent Children timeline. There's the Sephiroth that's in Cloud's head, messing with him. And then there's like another one. I forgot the fourth one, but yeah. And for those that may be either lost on this or what's going on, the whole like idea of calling Final Fantasy VII remake a remake isn't necessarily because from a a visual and a reboot and everything like that type of standpoint. It's more from a storytelling standpoint because it refers to Sephiroth himself, who is, the villain of the story, but also can be considered the protagonist in some aspects. He is trying to remake things in his image because he didn't like how things ended up. Because we all know in the original, Sephiroth dies. Like, he learns the truth about his origin and his mother and all that stuff like that, and it drives him insane. Like, he was pretty much fine until he read some books. That's just the reality. So, he was fine up to that point, but at the same time, he isn't entirely not justified because, I mean, Shinra did screw him over. So he is just basically like how Cloud and Zack are, in a sense, another victim of Shinra and or their corporate greed and their manipulation or anything like that. But he decides to, take things in his own hands. He wants to do things his own way. He wants to remake the world. And essentially that's what he was trying to do in the original game anyway, before doing, and not like unlike in the remake, where the remake is a sequel in a sense. It's not a direct one-to-one retelling of the story because things happen differently. You got the freaking plot ghost as well, things like that. He's trying to remake the world, and it's a sequel. And some people be mad about that or not understand that or whatever have you, but that's just the reality. That's what even the devs even kind of confirm that to a point. There's things going on in here, like the sky especially, I feel like is, an indication maybe a meteor's on its way in doom or like a dreadful future in a sense on the way. And then this is representing, different timelines here as far as like with Cloud and Zack's timeline. There are certain characters that are dead in Zack's timeline and that are not dead in Cloud's. Like, we're still wondering if Jesse is alive in Zack's timeline, but still dead in Cloud's, Biggs and Wedge, like what's going on with them, for example, because of the post credits, things like that. And the fact that in Zack's timeline, Cloud is still technically like knocked out or whatever. Like, he's still kind of like, I don't know. Like, we don't know when he's recovering and if he's even going to die in Zack's timeline, because how is that going to work? With Cloud being alive in the original timeline, but also Cloud being alive in Zack's timeline. And then the whole fact of like, there's that scene where a bunch of the characters are essentially put on stretchers and taken away via helicopter. because something happened to them. And it's not clear if that's, I don't think it's Cloud. I think it's Zach's timeline indicating, because, there was something that happened where Aerith is missing. Zach goes to the church. Aerith's not there, and people are sad. And that's probably what happened. It's there. And like the whole, how the world is, and this is also possibly hinting at or foreshadowing how the timelines are essentially kind of going to merge at some point together. Merge for at least a brief period, or the dangers of them merging, and how them merging is going to cause chaos and destruction on a scale never seen before in this universe. That's also something else to keep in mind here. This is like timelines merging, meteors on its way. Sephiroth is essentially about to get what he wants, type of thing. Rebirth feels like it's setting up to be potentially the Empire Strikes Back version of Final Fantasy VII in this trilogy, which I'm all for. It should be that. It should be where the bad guys are on top, and then, in part 3, that's when the heroes come back, and essentially try to bring it back. And then you got here where Cloud and Zack are on the side as they represent their destinies being torn apart by Sephiroth. So yeah, their destinies are being torn apart, literally and figuratively. The image of blood, fire, and red that evokes Sephiroth stains the sky and spreads over the world. The subtle red shade in the logo is also inspired by the same imagery. Meaning, there's probably going to be a lot of character deaths, potentially. Just, a lot of, carnage, destruction, blood. Not necessarily, outright, gory, bloody like that, because it's never been the case. But the red is indicating that, okay, the villains, or villain, is going to have the upper hand in this one. There's going to be a rebirth, in a sense, I feel like, of Sephiroth in this, sequel, of this retelling. In the fact that there's just going to be so much stuff that is mixed around, changed around, they've admitted to, that's going to happen differently. So, and Forgotten Capital may not entirely be what it was, even though I believe they said that it's going to end at the Forgotten Capital in this part of the story. Somehow we're going to get there, but it's not going to be in the same way we think. So there's a lot to be, to dive into here and speculate about with this artwork. I can only, imagine how great it's going to be to figure out in the long run, but I'm excited for it. I'm here for it. And we already know we can play as Sephiroth and see his point of view early on. So we'll have to wait and see how this plays out, and how, in some ways, they're going to portray Sephiroth as a protagonist as well in his own right. Because in some aspects, he is. But obviously, ultimately, he's the villain of the story. But he's a complex villain, just like Cloud and Zack are complex characters in their own right. So I'm looking forward to it. Think of what you will with this, but just like Remake, Rebirth is going to be essentially continuing the sequel storytelling, the timelines like that, where this whole sort of Back to the Future type of vibes that's going on here with this game. And it's just going to be an incredible ride. And we're going to be left with more questions by the end of Rebirth, I'm sure.